Attorney General's guidance to public bodies on the Open Meetings Act during COVID-19 pandemic dated July 2nd, 2020. County board members may participate without being physically present in compliance with the established provisions. So go ahead and get a roll call, please.
Member Chaplin. Member Chavez.
Here.
Member Krajewski. Member Ozog.
Here.
Member Pachalski.
Here.
Member Rutledge. And Member Zay.
Here. Okay, we also have Member Schwarzy who is joining us via Zoom. Okay. Member Chaplin, Member Eckhoff, Member Garcia. Okay. And Member Desart just came in. So, okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to public comment. We do have one public comment. Jason, you're gonna read that?
Yes, sir. We have one public comment from Edgar Pell, subject advisors to redistricting committee. At the last meeting, the redistricting committee appeared to be moving towards hiring a mapping consultant separately from legal counsel. However, it doesn't make much sense for the county to hire two separate entities to provide redistricting services when one firm could likely do the same work. It is disheartening to hear that the state's attorney did not agree to an RFQ or RFP for legal services, but it is also perplexing to see the committee move towards hiring a separate consultant solely for mapping services. I hope that both sides could come to an amicable agreement on how the committee will move forward when that works, especially given its tight timeline for completing a map. That's the end of public comment.
Okay, that's all we have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Move on to chairman's remarks. Just thank you everybody for coming. Wasn't sure yesterday with finance and executive session and county board executive session and legislative, how we were gonna, if county board ran long, how we're gonna try to squeeze it in. So I thought it was better. Someone had said afternoons were better. So we did it today and gave us everybody a little extra time to look at the information we handed out. Approval of the minutes. I guess there's some questions on the minutes. So if we can just get those to Jason and Dana, and then we'll approve them at the next meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I just had a couple things that I wanted more clarification on. One was, and I just want to ask you personally, because one of the notes in the minutes, Chairman Zay says Chair Zay wanted to move forward with the RFQ and still does. And that wasn't necessarily what I walked away with, but did I misunderstand that that is still your intent?
It was at that time. I mean, again,
Okay.
when it comes, it's still a few credits short on my legal degree.
So am I.
But with the state's attorney, what he had told me at that point is that it's more of his choice for the legal. We're having this, we had that issue between legal and map drawing.
Right.
So, I mean, again, I
Okay.
wanted it to be open and didn't want an RFQ to go out if that's what everybody wanted to do and that's what the committee wanted to do.
Okay.
So that's what I, want to make sure that we're still on that same plane. And
Okay.
my biggest problem is I want to make sure we're doing this right. And even if
Right.
we need to go, and I know our public comment, if we need to go out and hire two people because of the data being late and everything else and the chance of lawsuits, wherever we see what's happening in Springfield, want to make sure we're doing everything the right way.
I agree.
So if that's hiring two people and having a legal counsel from the state's attorney and us having a map drawer and they work together, I'm fine with it.
That sounds good. And then my only second issue was it did say that many members that we were sending out a draft RFQ. And I think that could be assumed that we were sending that out for legal. And I just would like it clarified in the minutes that we did specifically designate that it would be only for a demographer, just so that there's
Right.
full clarity and transparency. So
Okay.
those were my only two comments.
Dana and Jason, you got those notes?
Yes.
So, okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and then before we send it out, we'll forward it back, we'll send it to you.
That sounds great.
Okay. before
Thank
we-
you.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna move on to discussion. Our state's attorney is here, Bob Berlin. So Bob, if you want to come on up and talk for a little bit here. Again, thank you for coming out. Again, this is, I know it might seem tedious, but it's big and we want to make sure we're doing it right. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, everybody. So I want to start out just by first talking a little bit about the redistricting process, because I know there is some confusion. There was confusion about the RFQ. And I just want to talk a little bit about that and about what the laws are. Obviously, there's redistricting every 10 years. And the process of redistricting involves drawing a map, but there's also a legal interpretation and laws that map has to adhere to. There's certain legal requirements. So there are a number of map consultants out there. There's people that actually do, that get the data and the software and actually draw the map. but it still requires the services of an attorney who is familiar with the laws to say that that map meets all the legal requirements so that we avoid a challenge to the map. So when it comes to the actual drawing of the map, that can be done, and I think in most cases is done by a non-lawyer. The state's attorney does not appoint non-lawyers. I have no authority to do that. That's really up to the board. I mean, if the board wishes to hire a consultant, that is within the province of the board. When it comes to attorneys, the Illinois compiled statutes say that the state's attorney may appoint qualified attorneys to assist as special assistant state's attorneys when the public interest so requires. So the law gives the state's attorney the authority, and only the state's attorney authority, to hire special assistant state's attorneys. I have done that over the course of my term as state's attorney. Whenever we've needed to hire outside counsel for cases or areas where I feel that my attorneys don't have the specific expertise. And we've done it in various areas of the law, as has or does every other state's attorney in the state. Some use outside counsel more often than others. We do a lot of our work in-house, as you know, but as the board knows, from time to time, on matters of elections or matters of workers' comp, we do bring in outside counsel. So it is the state's attorney who makes that appointment. Now, I have had discussions with a number of you about the attorney that we were going to bring in, and I've taken all your input, even though I didn't have to. I did, because I think it's important that we try, as we try and do with all of everything the county board does, and that is try to reach some type of consensus. So with that in mind, that's kind of how we got to this point. When the RFQ was being discussed and went out, my biggest concern was to make it clear it's for non-legal. And if there's people out there that respond, which I believe we got 2 responses, it's for non-legal work. We still need a lawyer who is qualified in redistricting to actually review whatever the map is and make sure that it complies with the law. I was given the names of a number of attorneys to review. I have done that. And let me just state that when the guidelines and requirements that I use in bringing in outside counsel is I look for people who are qualified, who can do the work, who I can trust, and who I believe are going to represent my office and this county in the best way possible. It's always been, I tell people all the time that victims of crime deserve the best lawyers. And I believe all of you know that I believe the county board and all of our elected officials in this county also deserve the best legal representation. And I've tried to do that with every appointment that I have made. Now, when it comes to redistricting, I want to make it clear that no appointment, as I stand here today, no appointment has been made yet. I have, in the course of researching attorneys, found who I believe is a well-respected, extremely experienced lawyer who has experience redistricting, who I believe is not political in the sense that he would favor one side or the other. And I want to talk just for a few minutes, if I can, about the law firm of Odelson, Stark, Murphy, Frazier, and McGrath. Mr. Odelson is here along with one of his associates, Ross Seckler, today, and I'm going to invite them up in a few minutes to answer some questions. But in regards to Bert Odelson, he has been practicing law for well over 40 years. His firm has been recognized as a leader in the development and practice of election law in Illinois. His firm has served as special legal counsel to electoral boards, as well as counsel before the Circuit Court, Appellate Court, Illinois Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court on a wide range of matters, including candidate nominating petitions, judicial review in Circuit Court, referendum petitions, electoral board hearings, election day procedures, recount and post-election activities, and as I said, appellate and Supreme Courts. His firm on the Democratic side has served as election counsel to Jesse Jackson Jr., to Chicago mayors Richard M. Daley, Jane Byrne, and Harold Washington. On the other side of the coin, his law firm has served as counsel on election law matters to former Senator Peter Fitzgerald. And also, Mr. Odelson was retained by the George W. Bush campaign to participate in an election challenge regarding an equal protection claim involving the measures used for the manual recount of the presidential election votes in Florida back in 2000. Some of the cases that he's handled, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just picked out a few, is he represented in Norman versus Reed. There was a ballot access, this was a ballot access case appealed from the Cook County Electoral Board to the Circuit Court. It went to the Illinois Supreme Court and all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And it involved the use of a political party's name and signature requirements for individual districts within a county. It was a landmark case in which Mr. Odelson served as a special assistant state's attorney for Cook County. And his legal decision for the board was ultimately upheld by the United States Supreme Court. In Genius versus Cook County, he represented the Forest Preserve of Cook County in a employee appeals board case that it involved the discharge of a police sergeant who was indicted by the grand jury on criminal charges involving the unauthorized purchase of police badges. Another Cook County case where he represented Cook County as a special state's attorney was Brown versus County of Cook, which was a lawsuit alleging that a sergeant in the Cook County Sheriff's Office was denied a promotion to lieutenant due to his political affiliation and failure to contribute to the sheriff's campaign in violation of his free speech rights. Sutton versus Cook County Officers Electoral Board, he successfully defended Cook County's electoral board's decision to overrule the voters' objections to party committee's nomination and candidacy for office of state senator. And finally, in Papaleo versus Dart, he again was appointed as a special state's attorney in Cook County to defend the former superintendent of the Cook County Jail against claims of deliberate indifference to the plaintiff's medical needs while in jail. Mr. Odelson also has experience in redistricting. He has assisted with clients, including municipalities such as the city of Chicago, the city of Calumet City, and the village of Oak Lawn, all in Cook County, as well as school districts like Community High School District 218 and municipalities such as North Lake, Oak Forest, Countryside. He has personally represented the African American caucus in the city of Chicago through the ward redistricting process after both the 2000 and 2010 census. So he and his partner are here today. He's got outstanding qualifications. I believe he's fair. He has a tremendous reputation. And I just want to make it clear in this process, again, my understanding of the process is many of the attorneys who do this, remember they only do it once every 10 years. When they do it, they have to bring in somebody to actually draw the map. The lawyer is there to interpret the law and make sure that it's done legally, but they always bring in someone to draw the map And I understand there's been a lot of discussions about consultants or map drawers. I just want to make it very clear again. The statute allows the state's attorney to bring in outside counsel, but clearly, when it comes to a consultant, that is within the province of the board. So if there's any questions on that, be happy to take any questions.
So I just want to clarify that last statement. So I want to make sure that I'm seeing it clearly for what you're saying. So are you saying that regardless of whatever state's attorney, special state's attorney that is appointed, he will also have a map drawer on his end in addition to any potential consultant that we, or map drawer that we may choose between, like for instance, today's 2 RFQs?
No, so I think we're gonna have one person who draws the map. So we could have a situation where the attorney uses someone, and I'm sure Mr. Odelson will explain, he's used people in the past to actually draw the map, or the board can have its own person draw the map, and the lawyer is there to work with whoever that person is to make sure it's done properly.
I think if that's the will of the board, they'll work in concert together. So if, like some firms have map drawers, some don't, the consultant can have it. I mean, if the board decides we want to go with an outside consultant, not their firm, to draw the map, then they'll have to work with that consultant. Oh, Mike.
Piggybacking on that, I'm not quite clear. Can the specially appointed state's attorney have their own map maker brought in if there's discrepancy issues with what they're presented with? After our consultant, we present the map, do they have access to a map maker, basically, or some kind of a?
Mr. Odelson might be able to actually answer that question better, I think, when I
Okay.
bring him up here.
hold on.
If,
I think we're gonna dictate what the map is. They're gonna make
Yeah.
sure it's okay. I
Okay,
mean, that's the things we'll have to work out during this process.
okay, thank you.
Member Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so the board can hire a map maker, map drawer. And as we're drawing the map, the attorney may come in and take a look at what we're drawing. Is that correct?
correct.
And may say legally you can't move that line or something to that effect. Correct? Is that correct?
Yes,
So is it my understanding that the map maker and the attorney may be working in simultaneously at times together as well?
ideally, I believe that's the best way to proceed, as opposed to having the map maker just draw a map without any legal input and then show it to the attorney afterwards. I believe typically how it's done is the attorney will actually work with the person drawing the map, because questions will come up as you're moving lines.
So would the attorney have, so at our meetings, if we do hire a consultant and bring a consultant in, and we have the consultant doing the map, and then the attorney, I assume, would be in all of those meetings as well? Or the majority of them? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to.
Yes,
We would work that out, but yes, I think to be safe, so we know what
Yes.
we're drawing. It would be kind of a waste if we sat there for an hour drawing stuff.
right.
And then send it to an attorney. Attorney says, well, no, you really can't do that because of X, Y, and Z, and then you're back to square zero. I think they would work together.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And that's the attorney's role. The attorney's role is not to draw the map. The attorney's role is just to make sure that what's being drawn is legally sufficient and will uphold the challenge.
Chairman, I know we have a pretty extensive GIS team in-house. And I know in Elmhurst, when we remapped our city, we had our own GIS team do that instead of hiring an outside contractor. Naturally, legal, they had to oversee that, et cetera. Is that something we want to think about possibly doing that in-house and or, to save dollars, or is this, the attorney's going to call balls and strikes, right? And that's why we're hiring Bert, Olson Stark. But at the end of the day, does it make sense to use our own team in-house that has all those numbers and has those, the existing maps are in place, they'd be relatively easy to tweak. I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
In a normal year, I would say yes. This
Mhm.
not being normal, I would say no. I think our GIS is going to be involved, and we're going to get a little bit of report at the end after we get this figured out, that they did some preliminary looking at maps. So I think our GIS is going to be involved, and we can work, again, coordinating all three together, our GIS, the consultant and the attorney. I think we can work that out. But Pete, in a normal year, I understand what you're saying, but with data coming out and different data being used and challenges already being sent out, I think just to be safe, I think we should hire an outside consultant and then, you know, have our legal team through the state's attorney and then use our GIS. So using probably all three phases.
I just want to say that I think State's Attorney Berlin's choice is a very excellent and fair one, and very capable and qualified, and it's the purview of the State's Attorney to make this choice. I do appreciate your leadership. Thank you.
Before I saw Member Pachowski had his hand up.
Yes, when the state's attorney initially made this appointment, was it strictly as an attorney? Was it also to use this firm's in-house counsel or consultant or GIS? What was our plan at the time when Bob first brought out the Odelson firm, as far as whether we'd have one or two?
Well, first of all, just no engagement has been made. We've said that many a times.
I mean, when he brought his name up for our consideration.
The original consultant that was objected to was doing both. So that's where we're at right now. We haven't, the state's attorney has not engaged Mr. Odelson at this point.
I understand that, but was Odelson's firm going to use their consultant, the in-house consultant, or third-party consultant? I'm confused.
They have a consultant. I'm sure Mr. Odelson will address that. I know that he's used when he's done redistricting before. And again, my understanding of the process is every attorney who does redistricting has to use some type of a map drawer or a map consultant.
So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. So, and I just wanted to reiterate, I think, you know, piggyback off of what you said, this year is important, but also if maps were so easy to draw, we wouldn't need people to do it if our GIS could do it. I think we really need to have a professional outside consultant help us draw the map. And I welcome our GIS team to help in the process, but they have professional map drawers for a reason, I think. So I would strongly support, you know, going with the consultant.
Any other questions? We want to have Mr. Odelson come up and speak a little bit. Maybe he can lead us through some of this legal stuff.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon.
This is Ross Seckler. Ross is an associate in the firm, a little more techie than I am, so he helps with the drawing. Maybe I can just answer a couple of the questions that were brought out. I, as a lawyer, do not draw the map. I am the legal consultant, and we have map drawers to do that, and we help them move things around and when looking at a number of factors, which I'm going to go over for you real quick. There are a number of legal obligations which you have as board members to make sure this map is legally correct, because the one thing you don't want to do is get sued, because if you look at the lawsuits throughout the decades of mapping throughout the United States, they prove to be very costly, divide parties within themselves and parties against parties. So it's always been my philosophy when doing maps is to make it legally defensible, so that no one will even think about challenging your map because it's so fair and representative of your county. That's the perspective that I look to. It has changed through the 3 decades that I've been doing it dramatically because of the United States Constitution, the Illinois Constitution, state statutes, and case law. So it's framed. The framework we now have is based on established law, depending on the demographics of what we're doing, whether it's the state the county, a municipality, or a school district. I'm just going to talk briefly, if I can, about Will County, a neighboring county, because we have the Will County executive, who Jennifer Bertino-Tarrant hired me, and I'm a special state's attorney in Will County to do some bond work and to help with the map in Will County. And the county executive put the map together with her chief of staff and with their own GIS department. So I'll answer that question that was posed is, who do we use? Well, in Will County, we used our own internal GIS department, and we guided, using the old map, we guided that department along with the help of the county executive as to what her vision is, and just presented it to the county board. Far different than the situation you have here in DuPage, because Jennifer is making some dramatic changes, going from 13 two-member districts to 21 single-member districts. Very dramatic. Their population is 700,000 versus your 900,000 plus. So their target district will be 33,000 people in a single member district versus your population, which will work out to about 150,000 per your 3-member district. So it's different. It's different counties, different circumstances. We've drawn 6 majority minority districts because their demographics and their population deserves it. And by legally, that's what we have to do. I'm not sure because I haven't been engaged yet, so I haven't sat down and crunched the numbers exactly what your demographics look like. I have some idea, but I can at least give you this little bit of an outline, which we did in Will County, which applies to my municipalities, applies to the city of Chicago, applies to every redistricting case throughout the United States. What we look for 6 things. We try to bring the districts in substantially equal population as nearly as practicable. So the population deviation between the districts is as close to 0 as possible. Now, I'll deviate from that for a second. The law allows us a 10% deviation, 5% high, 5% low. I've never produced a map in that area. It's always been within 1 or 2%. Number 2, each of the districts must be consistent with the United States Constitution, which gives us the initial basis as to remap. 3, each of the districts has to be drawn consistent with the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. 4, each of the districts have to be compact and contiguous as required by our Illinois Constitution. 5, each of the districts has to be drawn consistent with the Illinois Voting Rights Act of 2011, which is new. Illinois has a Voting Rights Act also. And finally, each of the districts has to be drawn taking into account communities of interest. And I won't go into detail what communities of interest are, but it is as it sounds. You try to keep communities together. You try not to break up townships. You try not to break up municipalities. We try to account for the tracking of population migration. Where is it decreasing? Where is it increasing? We look for geographic features and natural or logical boundaries. So there's a lot from my side, my legal side, to take into account versus your GIS person or your consultant, whoever you get, who will move the blocks around and tell us how much population is on each block and who lives there, and are they white, black, Hispanic, Asian, etc. So we get a feel for whether you need a minority district, whether your districts are compact, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of what we look for and what I've done in very interesting situations. After you've done the Chicago map with 3 different caucuses, 3 different lawyers and 3 different map drawers, and I've done that twice now, you can do anything, to be honest with you. I think, and I did this real quick, so I don't want to be on record, and maybe State's Attorney Berlin knows, but I looked real quick. In Chicago, they have a December 1st deadline for drawing the map. In Illinois, which is why you hear it on the news now, they have a June 1st deadline. And we looked real quick under the Counties Act. Your code doesn't address it that I could find, your county code, but the state county code seems to say that you have to have a map done by July 1st. Yeah, so again, don't hold me to that. We
I
just
think
looked at
it's-
it
I
real
think
quick.
it's our first meeting in July. I think that's what it is.
Okay, yeah. So I looked at it real quick because I wanted to see if we needed to rush to the finish line or whether we had some time, like in Chicago. Yeah, and there is no requirement for my municipalities that where we're dividing wards or my school district where we have districts. I don't have a time frame there, so we can take our time. But it seems that yours is a little more of a rush. It's not going to be a marathon. It's going to be a sprint to get there. Again, I'll address if you're going to hire a consultant who can help do the boundaries and it's fine with me. I mean, again, in Will County, we used in-house. You can do it either way you want. You have a map. You have an established map. We have your 2 map proposals you did in 2012. And again, I haven't done enough research, but I found it a little strange that your map was in 2012, which is 2 years after the census, but I'm sure there was a good reason for that. But I'm comfortable using your in-house. I'm comfortable using a consultant who draws maps. Either way, we'll mesh together and make sure you have a fair and equitable map that is not contestable. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Chairman Zay. So you mentioned that Chicago had 3 different attorneys for their 3 different lawyers for their 3 caucuses.
Yes.
So were those attorneys provided by the state's attorney or were they hired by each entity privately?
In Chicago, they have a corporation counsel so the state's attorney,
Okay, I don't know what that
an in-house. So the state's attorney doesn't get involved with the everyday operation of the city government there. The corporation counsel's office he has his own staff of 200 lawyers, and then he or she hires outside counsel. In Will County, the state's attorney was in charge and hires special counsel.
And then with Will County, so you mentioned that the chairwoman drew the map. And then did the board also draw a map as well, do you know, or did the chairwoman just bring a map forward?
She brought a map forward.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I think.
It does allow it in the code. I read it. I read the code. The chair can bring a map forward.
Yeah, your chairman, I think, could have brought a map forward
Yes.
by the
yes.
third meeting in May, if I read that correctly.
Yes, that was what I had read in the code as well. So,
Mr. Chairman,
thank you.
Member
thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'm not clear on, you said the county executive working with in-house in Will County brought a map forward. Was it the county executive or was it the chairman of the county board?
Will County is set up different than you. There's an elected office called the county executive,
Okay, so it's.
similar to your chairman.
Got it. I was
And
thinking-
she brought the map forward.
Got it, okay.
Okay.
And then my other question was, going back to 2012, I was not aware that our map was not created until 2012. Could you clarify
No,
that?
I think
It
that's wrong.
doesn't seem
Is that
correct.
wrong? Because I
No,
found
we
on,
did in 2000.
I saw 2 proposed maps in 2012. So, yeah, so again,
We'll find it, but we did it. Liz was here. We did it, I think, right? No? No, we did it in 2011 because the elections in 2012, we have to, everybody was up. So
So that may have just been somebody chatting about a map.
no,
There's something on the website we found dated in July 2012.
2 different maps.
It's the same thing we got this year. It's gonna be 2022. It's for our 2022 elections, 10 years later.
True, but
maybe it's,
This map will be 2022.
it'll be.
we're saying the map, it probably says the map's effective starting 2020, 2012. That's ours will say 2020.
Right.
So this will be.
Brian came
for
out of
the
nowhere.
2022. I got it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And although I'll just add a little bit of Springfield insight, it looks like this weekend they'll put a bill together to push the primary to June. Now, whether that'll be permanent or not, I don't know, but I have it on pretty good authority from both sides of the aisle that looks like that is imminent to push the primary.
Well, we would talk about that later. We also heard from the Senate President's office, they're going to push our date back to October for the map. We won't know until Tuesday. So,
Yeah.
I mean, on good high authority that they're going to push the counties back to at least October for the map.
Oh, that'd be
Which
great.
would-
Yeah.
Which would stop the gray hair from coming on me. Remember Ozark?
I'm not going to address gray hair. We have to, I lost my, okay, so if we do change it, if it is changed to October, I assume. that
We
the
still have to,
primary
we
date-
still have to get going.
But
on it.
no, the question I wanted to ask, when are we expecting the census data, and is that a firm commitment from the,
The census data is
Census Bureau.
expected in September.
okay?
And I'll tell you that the American Community Survey is an agency of the Census Bureau. That's the agency that is generating the numbers that Springfield's using right now and we used in Will County. Again, it's an agency of the Census Bureau. If you compare the census data versus the American Community Survey data from the last census, it was within 3% of each other. So it's very, very close. Except in Kendall County. Kendall County was the fastest growing county in the United States, and their deviation between the census numbers and the American Community Survey numbers was 9%. But that's because it was so fast growing.
Just one last comment about the American Community Survey.
Yes.
I just wanted the committee to note that we've been discussing using data from 2017, and when I was reading about the mapping in Springfield, they are definitely using data from 2019.
2019, that's
So we
correct.
need to be sure that our data is
It will be.
aligned with what I assume is the most recent available American Community Survey data.
You're correct. It is.
Okay.
We would, if I'm retained here, we would be using the 2019 because that's the most
Right.
recent.
Yeah,
Data.
I noted that with the Springfield discussion. So just for the record, thank you. Thank you very much.
Just to stick, thank you, Mr. Chairman, just to stick with this subject, I do think I want on record, though, that the census data, if we can use it, is so critically important. So I would advocate that we as a committee reach out to our local state reps and work and push for what I have heard. I've heard similar to Member Chaplin that maybe a 12/1 date might be on the table in Springfield. And again, that would give us time to really use the census data, which I think we have the census data for a reason, and we do this map making for a reason in this year because we can utilize really what's the best data out there and that reaches out to our most vulnerable communities and counts them. And I think it would be a huge missed opportunity. And I think I would think you would agree could possibly open us up to lawsuits in the future if we don't use the most accurate data. And I just hate to see that for the county. So I think as a committee, as board members, we need to be pushing for a later date.
And then we can talk about that. We'll talk with Jason. Maybe we do a letter as the board or as a committee and send it
Yes.
just
That would be
a
great.
blanket letter out to all our reps saying, this is important. We need to do this. We have sent information into all these public hearings that we wanted to use those numbers. So I did have one question.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's imperative you start now and hope by sending a letter that they do push the date back. And I think you draw a map based on the 2019 data and hope you get the census data and that it won't change much because historically it doesn't change much. But I think you need to start now. And if we can push it, you're absolutely right. We draw it as consistent as we can with the pertinent census data.
I did have one question.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify. So you work with whoever we choose, right? So if we
Yes.
decide to come up with a consultant that we want to use for mapping, you'll work with that person.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
As long as they're competent. I mean,
Yes.
and if they're not, I'll be calling.
Okay. Well,
I'll
that's
be
fine.
calling the boss over here and
Call
telling him,
Bob first, yeah.
help me. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other? Member Pachowski.
Yes, Bert, you said you used in-house, it was Will County. how did that work? And were there any negatives in using the in-house staff in Will County?
Yeah, we used the GIS in Will County, and there was no negative. However, we're in the late stages presenting the map because we've given it to them. But when the early stage of comments, again, they're not commenting about the viability of using their in-house GIS. There's going to be a lot of discussion about going to a single member districts and going from 13 to 21 districts. So it's similar to what you're hearing with the state now, as far as the Dems and the Republicans and, the going back and forth. So no, using the GIS in-house was absolutely no problem.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I just want to add also that we represent our Aurora with special litigation and things there, Darien. We're the township attorneys in Naperville Township. I'm the village attorney in Lamont and in Bolingbrook. So we do touch you, and we have a presence in DuPage. And I live in Burr Ridge. I'm not that far. So, okay. Any more
Any other
questions for me?
questions for Mr. Odelson or our state's attorney?
Thank you.
No?
I just feel like there is an issue that we need to address, and I think it's a concern potentially going forward. I know that we had some initial concerns about our previous legal, and I don't know if he was officially counsel, but that was brought to a first few of our meetings because we believe there was a conflict of interest. So that was addressed, and I completely appreciate that, State's Attorney Berlin, for you taking action on that. However, I think we're in a similar situation. I think you've brought to the table a supremely qualified candidate who obviously has a great deal of election experience. But I do understand that there has been a working relationship between you and Mr. Pete DeCiani, or at least a payment exchanged. And I want to make sure that just in a public forum that we're completely transparent about that, because I do have some concerns, and I'm just hoping that we can have an open conversation about this, so that transparency is first and foremost. So my understanding, as I know it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that a payment was received by you in December of 2020. It appears to be for paid for services rendered for Pete DeCiani's daughter in her election campaign suit, is maybe not the best word, but against the DuPage County clerk. And I am afraid that this payment could potentially be perceived as a quid pro quo. So I know it's awkward, Mr. DeCiani, I respect you as a member, but I do feel like this needs to be addressed in an open forum, and just so that everything's on the table. So can we as a committee, and can we get advice from, our state's attorney? But I think it's something that we would be remiss if we didn't bring it to the table at this time.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment?
Go.
Yeah, I represented Pete's daughter in an election contest, and it was a very unique case. And I viewed it as a woman's civil rights to use the hyphenated name, and it provided a lot of interest for me. And we did represent Pete's daughter, and he paid me for our services. For full disclosure, I also represented Chairman Cronin in an ethics complaint, maybe the last election cycle, I think, I'm not sure. And I also sent him a bill, and he paid me. So I think those are the only two instances that I've touched anyone on your board. We do work throughout the state. As few remap lawyers there's even fewer election lawyers, because remember, the remap is once every 10 years and elections are once every 2 years. So if that's all you do, you're not making a living as a lawyer. So I've developed, especially in election and remap, to go with my municipal practice. We represent governments, and as the state's attorney was very kind in talking about a couple of my cases, we represent counties and the state and state's attorneys and municipalities, and do all sorts of work through all the courts in both state and federal. And through that, you meet a lot of people. Mr. DeCiani reached out to me. I thought it was a meritorious defense of his daughter, and that's what we did. But as far as Republican, Democrat go, I have credentials on both sides of the aisle, and
And I
So-
appreciate that. I think my, if I can continue on that for just a minute. So my concern is, and I appreciate that this is a very specialized legal expertise level, but I do feel that this is awfully close. Like, we're talking just about December of 2020. To be quite frank with you, if we had a few elections removed, I would have less concern. And I know, to your point, there's few attorneys to choose from. This just happened to be your choice. But for me, it's just a little too close for comfort. I think the perception could be, and I am by no means saying that anything untoward is necessarily happened. I do think it's a little odd that this was paid from Mr. DeCiani's account for a separate campaign that really should have been paid, in my opinion, out of her political action funding. So for me, that doesn't quite add up to full transparency, in my opinion. I don't know that that would be the legal opinion, but I think there could be question marks presented.
Yeah, and I can address that. That's not the correct legal interpretation, because you're not required to form a committee unless you spend or receive $5,000. So the fact that the father paid for his daughter, you know, I think he should be proud of that, rather than and it's very transparent. And quite frankly, I'm the lawyer. I didn't care where the money came from. You just had to pay my bill. So the reporting was on their side of the aisle, not on my side. So I want to be transparent too, because I don't want to be hired because I'm a Democrat or Republican. I've been a lawyer for a long time, and I value my law license far more than how I vote.
And I appreciate that. As the daughter of a sitting judge and a lawyer, I appreciate your commitment to be blindfolded and hold the scales, right?
Yeah,
So
I'm just going to do what the law tells me I have to do. Again, I don't know. And I know Pete and I know Dan Cronin. That's it.
And I think for me, like I said, I think your credentials have been presented well. I just still have a problem with the potential perceived quid pro quo.
Well,
And I think we as a committee should perhaps discuss.
And you don't hire me. My boss is a state's attorney.
I
I
agree.
work for you on behalf of the county, but as I am a special state's attorney in Cook and in Will, I work directly under the state's attorney's authority.
And I would agree with that. And while you are an exceptional candidate, it seems to be, and have great credentials, I think we perhaps need to address the fact that there are still other options within the state of Illinois. So I just, you know, and by no means am I downplaying anything that you've brought to the table today, but I think we need to recognize that we could have potentially hire an attorney that has no connection with any sitting board members or the chairman.
Good luck.
Mr. DeCiani, you want to respond?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And with all due respect, Member Chavez, the pro quo would be, I think, if I didn't pay the Odelson firm, or Chairman Cronin didn't pay for the services, and we're giving them a contract as a favor, or as you would say, pro quo. I paid the man. I paid the man on behalf of my daughter. I disclosed it legally. So I'm kind of offended at your comment. It's disgraceful, to be honest with you. To go after a woman who tried to run for office and her father paid for her expense within the legal law, the election law. I don't see a pro quo. I don't see a illegal action. So I think you really need to be careful in your statements, because I think it's offensive and it's not true. There's no pro quo. I paid the bill, and I was happy to pay the bill on her behalf. I wanted her to have good counsel, and it is what it is. I've worked with many election attorneys over the years, and he's one of the finest out there. Again, this is State's Attorney Berlin's purview, and he's probably the most experienced with mapping. I also want to mention to you, I've researched his voting record. He's a registered Democrat. So while this is not a political appointment, this is not a political appointment. He's a balls and strikes guy, but he's a registered Democrat. So if I was offended by that, I would be like, hey, wait, what are we doing? But you know what? This is a man this is what he does for a living. And it's not about politics. It's about doing the right thing and calling the balls and strikes. And I think State Attorney Berlin has done a good job in the pick. Thank you.
Bob, you want to respond to any
If I could just address one thing. I became aware of the fact that Mr. Odelson represented Mr. DeCiani's daughter. It was a challenge regarding a hyphenated last name where the electoral board basically dismissed her from the ballot, rejected her petitions because of that. The board, this county board was not a party to that. Mr. Olson has probably handled maybe hundreds of cases like that on behalf of candidates in various election matters. So it's certainly nowhere even close to any type of a legal conflict. I was initially of the opinion that the first attorney that we had talked about, I didn't believe there was a legal conflict, but in deference to some of the board members, because of a pending lawsuit involving one of our elected county officials, I did agree to try and find somebody else. Honestly, there is no legal conflict. I don't see a problem whatsoever. And, you know, the reality is, because it is once every 10 years, there's not a lot of attorneys out there who actually do redistricting. There really isn't. And my biggest concern, as I said before, is finding someone who has experience and who's qualified, who I can trust and I believe is going to be fair. As I've said before, the process of redistricting itself may be political, but the lawyering is not. And the lawyering is a simple interpretation of the laws to make sure that whatever the map that is drawn by the board is legally sufficient.
Can I just address that real quick or
Sure.
follow up? So I agree. I think that, you know, obviously we want a lawyer that is completely bipartisan as best as possible and just interprets the law. I think we would be remiss if we didn't identify that sort of the elephant in the room, that just by its nature, this committee has the potential to have partisan issues. And so I think that we have to just be upfront and honest about that, because we're dealing with maps, we're dealing with districts, we're dealing with how people vote, where they vote, who they vote for. So innately, it has the potential. Overall, I just think I just have a concern, and I think that we should have some degree of separation. And that's still my opinion from anyone who's been recently represented or is a current sitting board member. That's my opinion, but I'm happy to entertain others.
I mean, again, election, I mean, we've had concerns the last time because, I mean, if you get rid of Mr. Lukihans and Mr. Odelson, there's not really too many election or mapping people that are left in the area. And
Well-
I know you brought people forward. You have a horse in this race, so we
Not
did do
necessarily.
research. We did do research on it, and they are very partisan firms there. And actually, I think I was told, because I do have friends in other counties, that Mr. Mullen actually reached out to Kane County and actually asked some questions on behalf of DuPage, which I think is completely not appropriate at that point. Hasn't been engaged by this county or by the state's attorney's office. There's only one person who can contact another county on behalf of the county, and that's our state's attorney's office. So again, there wasn't a conflict with our first consultant, and we moved on that. I don't think there's a conflict here. This is the state's attorney's choice. What we have the choice to do is hire a consultant to draw the map, and that their legal will take care of it. So I understand your concerns, but I think it's at some point we have to move forward, and picking a law firm to oversee the map is the state's attorney's choice at that point, because they're going to be an assistant state's attorney. And again, I don't know, as Mr. Olson said, I don't know him. I've never met him before until today, but I can tell you my 30 years in politics, when you talk election law or remapping, his name's right at the top with everybody else. So, I mean, there's not a big list of people.
And
So we
just
don't
to-
want to move forward with that. I mean, lawyers work, they represent people. That's what they do.
Well, and
And
just
if I'm
as,
not mistaken, Mr. DeCiani, I don't think we were happy about Mr. DeCiani's daughter ran as a Democrat, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's an issue that Pete had to deal with on our side. And you said elephant in the room, there's three of us. No, just joke.
Well, and it-
But
well,
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to, I mean, I don't want to address that, but I do feel that just as a point of order, I did not necessarily have a horse in this race. I made 2 recommendations. I know several other Democrats in this room made other recommendations that I to your point, I didn't know them either. I really don't know. We were all looking for, just as we set out to do during the April 20th meeting, we set out a process that we would make recommendations. So I did not necessarily have a horse in this race, but I did bring to the table some highly qualified candidates that have decades. I mean, I think we're acting like this is just like the winged Pegasus to find an election attorney, and I would disagree. I think that there are several in the area that are highly qualified that should be considered. I think that Mr. Odelson is clearly one of them. I'm not saying that there is not multiple people though that could be considered, and that doesn't mean that I just have one horse that I'm backing.
And I don't want to speak for the state's attorney, but he did look into many people that were brought forward. We brought people forward. We have counsel right now with our labor. We brought Mr. Durkin's name up. We contacted them. They don't do mapping. So we did contact other people to see who did that. And you were given all these names and you researched all of them, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't that it was put to the side. I mean, people did look into these firms, yes.
I think as almost all the board members who are in this committee know, I was provided, and I've had conversations with a number of you with these names, and I did look at all of them. I will not disagree. All are very qualified. There's no question about that. They're all very good attorneys. It was just based on a level of experience, what they've done throughout the course of their career, and what I'm looking for, which is to try and, although it's a political process, keep the politics out of it. That's really how I've tried to run the state's attorney's office, is to make decisions based on the law and the facts, use our discretion when we should be using our discretion, and be as professional as we can. That's really what I've tried to do. But I did entertain every name that was given to me and spent a lot of time researching all of them. And have taken everybody's calls regarding this process.
Member DC.
There we go. At the end of the day, I think we have to realize it's really not the board's decision. Our attorney is our state's attorney. It's the state's attorney's decision to make this call. He took input. He was fair and square. He calls the balls and strikes. We can talk about this all day long. We're not the state's attorney. Mr. Berlin is. So it's really his pick at the end of the day. It's who he feels comfortable with, and he's done his research and his due diligence. I also want to mention too, in the office of Odelson and Sturk are two, as of recently, two state reps that actually work there. I think one is of council and one recently left, but Kelly Burke and I believe another state representative works in your office. Both are Democrats. So again, I'm trying to make you real comfortable that, one, there's no pro quo. I paid the man. Number two, he's a balls and strikes guy. He's professional at what he does. And if he had all Republicans working for him, or if he was and not had any Democratic clients, I can maybe understand your perspective. But this man has got clients on both sides of the aisle, and people call him and ask his perspective on a regular basis at state, federal level, presidential level. I think his resume speaks for itself. And again, at the end of the day, it's not our pick. It's our state's attorney's pick. Thank you.
Oh, Brian, go ahead. Brian?
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, just trying to navigate here. Thank you. First of all, the 18 of us are going to make a decision on what the map looks like. We're going to have the ultimate final say on the vote. And I know State's Attorney Berlin's going to bring in whoever he feels is comfortable, but can we get back to maybe what we're looking at doing, what we should be doing, our committee? And that's looking at if we're going to bring a consultant on to help draw the map, if we're going to be using our GIS system, whether it's this attorney here who said he'll work with anybody we bring in, we need to start focusing on how we're going to, or who we're going to use, or what we're going to do the map. The attorney's just going to tell ultimately if we comply with the law, but we're going to be the ones drawing the map with somebody, and whether it's our GIS or are we bringing a consultant in. And I honestly thought that's what we're going to be talking about, because we have no say on who State's Attorney Berlin brings in as a special state's attorney to help him. But we need to decide whether we're bringing in a consultant or who we're gonna bring in. And, the attorney's gonna work with whoever we bring in. So are we gonna be talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the next thing. I just want to make sure all the questions for the state's attorney were well
Okay.
answered and we can move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Just to, we are, first of all, we're dealing with a lot of unanswerable questions, especially the fact that this whole process could be put forward 3 or 4 months. So you don't really need to appoint Mr. Olson today. We don't need to do that. Is that correct? Or you don't need to do that?
I don't need to do that today. That's correct.
So I'd like to propose that we don't have an appointment made until after our next meeting. There's no reason for Mr. Olson to reappear. But I'd like to postpone that decision for another 2 weeks or so, because I think
Really not our decision.
right, it's not our decision.
Not our
but I'd like
decision,
to-
so I
I'd
can't
like
tell the state's
to-
attorney to do or not do anything.
But
I
I'd
tried
like
to many a times, but he's been very firm in telling me no.
I'd like Mr. Berlin to consider postponing that decision for a couple of weeks, because we don't really know. And I'm not saying that, Mr. Olson won't be your appointment, et cetera, but since we don't really know what the time frame is here, I think that we could just postpone that. If you can postpone that decision for a couple of weeks, we won't have anything for him to review for at least 2 weeks. And if you could consider doing that, we could move on to the consultant right now. But I do appreciate Mr. Olson being here, and perhaps if you could consider that.
I'll absolutely consider it. And obviously, something also on my mind is what was discussed here earlier, and that is we're going to know more by Monday night, early Tuesday morning,
Yeah.
if the General Assembly is going to move the date.
Yeah,
So-
so I'm just in an effort to move on as well. So, but I do appreciate Mr. Olson being here and, your explanation of where we're at in terms of attorney, hiring an attorney for the special attorney, but perhaps just hold on.
Member Chapman.
Thank you so much, Chairman Zay. So, yeah, and I would like to also move on to the consultant, because I think if we can get at least a consultant that we all agree on, I think it would make us all more comfortable with the process. I don't know if that's everybody's viewpoint, right? If we had a map drawer that everybody's comfortable with, I think that would give us a little bit more confidence in the whole process. So I think that would be the good next step.
I already drew out option 1, use one firm, Olson's firm, so that's, I already put a line through that. So I understand.
And it would.
And again, I want to be
much-
open with it. I
much
mean,
yeah.
obviously, I did not know about the situation till I talked to the state's attorney yesterday afternoon with Mr. DeCiani and Mr. Cronin. So I don't know him. So again, I want this to be an open process. So, we can move forward on that. I would suggest, yes, we do have someone that's going to be a consultant for us. We do have that buffer. So if there are any feelings that we have a buffer, somebody drawing the map and somebody who's looking at the map. So, but again, we don't have to do that right now, but we do have to move forward with the consultant. I
Yes.
think, at this point. Okay, so move on to B. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just really quick
You're
question.
right. You're right in this weird angle here
I
with
know,
this
I'm
piece.
sorry,
here,
sorry.
so-
Thank you, Chairman. Just really quick question before I go on to that, because I definitely think we need to hire someone for the consultant point of view and not go with our home GIS. First of all, I'd like to hear about them, but just, I don't know if this committee and the board knows that the GIS people here also do a lot of municipalities. So they have a lot on their plate. So this is just going to be too much, I think, for them to be handling. So I really just wanted to give that 2 cents. So in case this board is not aware that they.
And Tom's here. We'll ask our old business. I'm going to ask Tom to come up.
Okay,
and speak on
fantastic.
that.
Thank you.
Perfect. So move on to the RFQs. Everybody got the RFQs? Feelings? I thought there was one firm that I thought was well qualified. That was Josina Morita. I think she's working with Kane. The other firm looked very good. It's very thick. Always, I was scared of thick presentations. But I thought the price, they weren't here. We'd have to do everything via Zoom or whatever. And that they would not, we wouldn't have anybody here to talk to. If we need to meet with them or have them come in, it's a little bit different. They are working with Kane. So I know we had talked about possibly when we find out legal issues, working with Kane, that will help for a smoother transition while working together. So questions on that? Is there anybody that, Member Pachowski?
Thank you. Is this person a sole proprietor? Because I don't see any businesses. Is it just her, or are there other people with her? Because what I got indicated to me that it was kind of a sole proprietor. Is that not correct?
No, I think Jason, did you want to? I think our state's attorney did look this person up too. She has a great reputation, I think.
My understanding, it's working under, it's Grapple LLC. Is that what I want to say? And I believe Josina Marito was the main individual, but she had another person working with her. I'm going to look at Jim McGuire if he knows anything other than that from me. Okay, good. He's shaking his head no, but that's my understanding. It's those two individuals. That would be, however, with requests for qualifications, we are allowed to call them back and ask for qualification things. So if you guys have any questions today, I will ask Jim McGuire and myself, who will contact them. So we'll make one of those questions. Who else is in this firm?
I got several questions. Is this woman on the Water Reclamation District of Chicago?
Yes.
They meet on Thursdays and then Kane County meets the same Tuesdays we meet. And Rock County meets 5:30 p.m. on Tuesdays. I'm just concerned that this person may be spread too thin. And I'm not going to throw partisan politics out, but is the fact that she's an elected Democrat an issue? Because it seems it was an issue on other things where Lukey Hans represented somebody that was a Republican. But if she's got water reclamation meetings on Thursday, the 1st and 3rd, and Kane County meets the same Tuesdays as we do, and Rock Island meets 5:30 p.m. on is this too much for this person to take on? That seems to me it's a very small office, and I'll be honest with you, I think in-house can do this, and that's how I would move it. Thank you.
Just to be clear, our concerns with Lucan Hans wasn't that he was representing a Republican. It was that he was in current litigation with the county, with the electoral process right now with our county clerk in the election division. So we weren't comfortable having somebody that's suing the county for election law then represent the county for election law. They had I said, if he probably wasn't in the litigation with the county, he would have been fine. But that was the issue with Lucan Hans. So, but it had anything to do with representation of representing Republicans or any of that.
In response to Member Kulkarski, it's really not our purview to decide if somebody has too much work to do. If they've decided that they want to bid for the contract, similar to attorneys, you've got a lot on your plate, you make it work. So that's really, I think, out of our concern. So I could certainly be in favor of this candidate.
And I just want to draw attention to the cover letter that they presented. It is not just Josina. She says that, let's see here in the 4th paragraph, on this project, I will partner with my colleague, Zach Kautsky, the president of Bertow Consulting LLC. So I do believe that it is a larger grouping that will be working on this together.
Which individuals on the water rec that's of this firm?
Josina
Marita.
Marita.
Was she Hanover Park elected official at one time or no?
I
Is it a
do
different
not
person?
see that on her.
Okay, I'm just curious.
And just for the record, I was told too, she's running for Cook County Board as a Democrat. So I don't have an issue with it. There's only a couple of virtuous people in this political thing. I'm one of them, of course, but but if we tried to weed through everybody, I think we would be here for a long time.
Do we have any ethics issues with her being an elected official in a neighboring county? I know like in Cook, nobody could do work in Cook from our board.
I don't think so.
I'm being directed by our procurement officer. However, Bob Berlin will speak, our state's attorney, Berlin.
I'm not aware of any ethics issues in that regard. I mean, I'll certainly look at it, but
Yeah.
I don't believe there's an issue.
And Bob, you did check this person out.
Again, just briefly, because this just came out
A couple of days ago.
a few days ago. And only from what I've heard is she does have a very good reputation. That's all I can say.
Okay, so you're okay with the group?
Is everything I've heard is positive. This is an experienced person who's done this before.
Oh, no, I get it.
Right, yeah, no, it's hard to say.
That is correct.
Right.
But
That you are
That makes me
correct.
more comfortable because we'll have to
Right.
vote on it, and I'd like to
Right.
support you guys and hopefully meet halfway on the issue at least,
I don't have an issue with it. I think she'll do a good job. Okay,
Very good. Thank you.
okay.
So can I go ahead and make a motion that we accept this consultant?
It's only an RFQ, so
Oh,
we have to bring it back to the
can't-
next meeting.
Okay, got
Now,
it.
if that is the consensus of the committee, then we can bring it forward at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Chair Zay, can I make one comment?
Yeah.
We will also follow up with that question you have, Kim McGuire and I will get that answer. And we can also then start talking about the contract with them, what that looks like for you guys to review.
So we can bring that up at the next meeting. I'm kind of waiting to see if we're gonna do it Tuesday. We'll probably do it Tuesday. We'll have a much better idea what's going on. So if that's consensus of the group, we'll bring forward or if we can on Tuesday, bring forward.
I believe
Yeah,
so. I know
contract.
there's a 1 o'clock meeting, but we can figure out from there.
Mike,
Sorry, I'm just saying, I just think that this committee right now has to take priority over any other committees right now unless there's a very important action item. That's just my thoughts.
I will
again, I
consult
think
with
it
our-
would be a very short meeting to approve this. I don't think we'll get into a lot. If we just approve this, it'll give us the first step and then we can have more meetings set up at that point. If that's okay with everyone. And Rosa.
I believe the 1 o'clock, there's the diversity inclusion will be having their first meeting. I will touch base with member
We'll
Chavez. or
squeeze
Chair
it in
Chavez.
somewhere.
Yeah, we'll squeeze it. My assumption would be probably 2:30. Yeah, my assumption would be 2:30 at this current, but I want to make sure that's amenable. Yes, Dana here has already done that for us. She blocked off 2:30, but we can reconsult if there's something that needs to be changed. Yes.
I have therapy on that. No. Yeah. So anything on RFQ? Everybody else is okay with that? Okay, old business, it was already talked about. It's been talk about Springfield, things are gonna happen, or they're gonna move back. Mr. Olson's more tight than I am. I heard about, there's been a lot of talk about moving the primary back that we have been asking for. But, that's out there, but I've heard for good sources that they're gonna move our date back to October. So that would help. Obviously, less time to file petitions and things, but again, we'll see what happens out of Springfield. Keep your fingers crossed. Who knows what's going to happen in Springfield? I know there's no bills that have come out so far with it, but on good sources from the Senate President's office, it was supposed to come out.
Should we put together a letter today or have staff put together a letter today to say that we want that date?
Yes, I'll talk with Cheryl. We already have somewhat of a letter that we sent all the redistricting meetings, so we can quickly adapt that, put everybody's name on it. We don't need to sign it. We can just electronically sign it. Is that okay? And put all the members of the committee on it, if that's okay?
Yes,
Okay.
I will work on that today and hopefully get it off tomorrow early.
Okay. Thank you. Member Olson.
When you just mentioned less time to sign petitions, I assume that if the primary is moved.
If the
everything
primaries
is
moved, yeah, it'll
moved.
be fine. If they keep the primary in March, obviously, I think
Right.
petitions go out end of August, right, or September, so, yeah.
So
September.
that would just be pushed, everything would be just pushed forward, I would assume, something like that, for the same time frame.
Yeah.
Okay. You think, yeah, okay, thank you. Hello?
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Okay, thank you.
Old business, Jason had called me today. You want to talk with Tom? This might be all mute if you want to talk about, they did some early numbers, our GIS people. And the way the current districts sit, there's not a lot of change.
Yes,
I think the
sir.
biggest deviation is District 6.
So
Figure.
Tom Ricker and I started talking real quick just to do a quick overlay and see where are we at as a county right now. So what he did is he took the current population numbers we know for our county at 926,000, give or take. I'm probably getting the number wrong by a few thousand. But he did that. He divided by the 6 districts, and he real quick kind of put out what that deviation point is, which I think was 154,000. So 153,000. And so I'll have Tom come up here and say specifically, but he'll real quick just tell you the deviation of where each of these districts are in population. If you want.
Two sources that we had. One was the ACS data. Okay, and we divided that by the 6 districts, the current 6 districts. And that came out to a breakup of 154,843. Okay. We also took a process through Esri, which is called a data enrichment. And they have current numbers. They have 2020 numbers. They pull from the ACS, but they also pull other stuff from private entities, and they populate that information once a year. And what it is, it's basically you take the boundaries and you overlay it in the GIS system, and it does a geoprocess and pulls that current population data and assigns it to that polygon. So what we did is we ran that on each of the 6 districts, and that total came out to 923,541. That's the total population. The breakout deviation there was 153,923.5.
And Tom and I will make sure to send you this information.
Yeah, so we're looking at the high number of like District 6. We need to add about 1,400 in that one to come to that deviation. And like District 4 is 20 people for that one to come to that, close to that one, that number that we pulled.
We're well within the legal
Yeah.
right now as the district state.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that really stuck out.
But that's just preliminary. That's
That's
obviously
just
with
preliminary.
no,
That's just preliminary.
no legal, no
preliminary
nothing.
numbers.
Just, it gives us a baseline, maybe just to see where we're at. We're worried there was shifts from the east to the west and everything else. Rosa? Microphone.
What year is your data based on? Is it from the ACS from?
Well,
2019?
the current one that we ran the enrichment on, that's from Esri, which is our GIS firm. And they, like I said, they update their data on an annual basis, and they pull from census, they pull from both public and private
Okay.
to provide that data to their clients.
So it's a compilation of different.
Right, where the ACS is
Data
an
points.
estimate over, how many years. So this one, they kind of pull all that information, they crunch all those numbers.
But it's definitely from within the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did we have any losses in any districts, or that's just taking the baseline? It sounded like you had additions of 1,400 in District 6, but were any anticipated as a loss?
You mean population coming lost from previous years?
Yeah,
I didn't run it from, previous years. I just ran, current data. I ran it from the ACS numbers over the years, those numbers for that deviation number. And then I did the enrichment part, breaking up the 6 to pull out the population for each of the districts from that 2020
that
population.
makes sense. Okay, thank you.
So it makes you feel a little better. At least we're getting, it's not official, but there hasn't been huge major changes.
Just to let you know too, the enrichment numbers I ran were on the 2020 Tiger files, which is the line data that just came out this census. Okay, the ACS data that you'll be pulling from matches up to the 2010 Tiger line files. So there could be polygons, blocks, Tiger tracks that were split or consolidated in the last 10 years. So just so you are aware of that.
Okay, any other old business?
Is swamped right now with other towns?
No.
You're not?
No, I dedicated this task to Mary Elliott, who's probably got most experience out of anybody on my staff.
So you have plenty of bandwidth.
So she's the one who, she's been working with the census in the last so many years of redrawing, helping them redraw the Tiger line files and working with this. So she's aware of the census data, the enrichment data, the population, the data that we have.
Are you doing any remaps for individual towns currently?
No, no remapping. No, we do have staff that does our shared services for the city of Lisle. So
So
that's
one
just
town.
GIS services.
I know Elmer's got their own GIS and, we don't really rely on the county.
Pardon me?
So Elmer's and many of the towns that I represent have their own GIS internally.
Yeah.
So they do their own remapping and so I think the argument is bandwidth is probably not a big argument, but
Yeah. Just within the last week, like I said, I was able to pull all this data and do all this. We actually went and found the ACS data. We can only find it on the track level, which is a large, geographic area. And talking to others, Lake County and so forth, we were able to find the ACS data on the block group level, which is the next level down. So we were able to, and those tables were statewide and they were terrible. We had to bring them all together and put them in one table. We were able to do that yesterday. So
I just wanted to state this directly to Tom. I want you to understand that our desire to have a consultant is absolutely no reflection on your department, your capabilities, your quality of work, or anything like that. The county looks different, and it looks different politically than it did 10 years ago. And speaking as a from the Democratic Party, there really wasn't a whole lot of Democratic representation 10 years ago, and I feel that it's important for us to be sure that we have the fairest map drawn for all of our population. And you know, the facts of life are that it is political, it is bipartisan, shall we say. But I just wanted to let you know that specifically. It's no reflection on you. It's our desire to make sure that we have as I guess an outside source that is consulting for us. Thank you.
Well, as someone who drew the last map and the way things are sitting right now, we probably shouldn't have hired that last consultant because it seemed to worked out okay for you guys.
I think I just started like 3 months the last time that was had. So I came walking in the door when things were happening with the last time. So
Remember, Eckhoff, do you have your hand up?
Well, I was gonna say the same thing you did, Mr. Zay, is that whoever hired the last guy needs to,
Yeah.
have a little bit of problems. But I would like to take staff out of the line of fire of being, or in the crossfire of anything that might go on in the future. That's the only reason I don't want to use them, but I think they're perfectly qualified and have lots of time to do it.
yeah, but if you have any, I understand, but if you have any questions as far as the data goes, especially if the PL 17 data comes out or whatever, the PL 94, the day of the redistricting data that's coming out on September 30th, that should be available because that gets down to the block group level. The ACS data only will go, the data that we found, they only will go down to the PL 17 data that'll come out in September. That goes down to the block level.
Right.
That goes down where the ACS data only goes to the block group level. So that's the middle level. There's 3 levels: track, block group, and block. So the population data for the ACS data only gives you numbers for the block group and not the block. So when you're when you're getting down to that fine tuning, you're going to need that block data to get down to that 0 number.
Thank you, and thank you. And I just really think that hiring an outside consultant really shows a good faith effort by both groups, by both parties that are involved in the process, you know, that we want to work together on this. And I think it really will set a good tone for the committee going forward if we do hire an outside consultant. So that's why I think it's very important. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on new business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion and a second, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.